So hello and welcome to St James's Park. Hopefully you can hear me over the Coldplay that is playing here before the game. We are on Tyneside. That means it's FA Cup 5th round weekend. Newcastle take on Brighton, hoping that they can make it into the quarter-final, and they've got a really good chance of going far in both competitions if they manage to get over this potential banana skin on home soil. You've got Manchester City, you've got Aston Villa, you've got Bournemouth, and you've got Preston already in the hat. We'll know by the end of the day whether Newcastle can join them, along with the likes of Manchester United, Fulham, and tomorrow Ipswich. Really warm afternoon here on Tyneside. It's a lovely Sunday afternoon. Hopefully Newcastle will be able to match the weather outside with their performance. We are expecting team news as I'm recording this in a couple of minutes. I will put the team news sheet here for you to show who is playing and who is not. But we have just seen Alexander Isak arrive at St James's Park. We know he is a doubt. He missed that game with Liverpool in midweek with a groin injury. Some people say that was maybe tactical. Some people say that you can't risk him ahead of the Carabao Cup final, and I think Eddie Howe really knows that he needs to be really careful with his super striker before they go to London in a couple of weeks' time. Apart from that, we have other team news that we'll potentially be keeping an eye on. Will Harvey Barnes play? Will he get his chance to really stake a claim in this first team as he maybe goes to rest the likes of Jacob Murphy or Anthony Gordon? And there's a big question to be asked at the defence, both in between the goalkeeping sticks and at centre half. Is Sven Botman going to play? And does Nick Pope keep his place over Martin Dubravka? As I say, I will put that team news sheet here for you to see in a second. But look, let's not make any bones about it. Eddie Howe wants to take this competition seriously. He is not just content with just one run at Wembley this season. He wants two. He wants them to be in the Carabao Cup final later this month, and then he also wants them in the quarter final of this competition at the very end of the month, before hopefully having another run in the Cup. Now, what we've said in the last couple of weeks is that Carabao Cup maybe a little bit of a distraction. Newcastle have maybe taken their eye off the ball a little bit. They obviously were beaten in pretty convincing fashion on Wednesday against Liverpool. They've nearly thrown away a 3-goal lead at home to Nottingham Forest. They need to make sure they're on the game today. Hopefully they are. And in a couple of hours' time we will know whether that Carabao Cup is still a distraction or whether they do have a chance of going to Wembley twice this season. As I say, it's a beautiful day here at St James's Park, and hopefully we'll still all be smiling in the lovely weather come this afternoon. But as I say, it's a potential banana skin. Ever since Brighton got beat 7-0 off Nottingham Forest just around a month ago, they've went on a fantastic run of winning 4 games from 4. Fabian Hürzeler, this young coach who's came over from relative obscurity in Germany, looking to make his mark, and he'll be wanting a cup run in his first season. And as I say, Brighton are no mugs, and Newcastle will have to be on their game today if they are going to beat them in the FA Cup 5th round. Well, as you can see behind me, that blue sky of pre-match has turned into a little bit of a dark colour as the day has gone on, and there's a little bit of a dark cloud over St James's Park after Newcastle United were knocked out of the FA Cup at Brighton. Just before I started recording this video, I'm just stood outside the stadium and I can hear Stack, and Champagne Supernova by Oasis was playing from the guy singing on stage, and I think Don't Look Back in Anger is probably the more apt song title from the band to be talking about right now, because an afternoon really where Newcastle United were seconds away from progressing in the FA Cup. They thought they'd snatched it late on with Fabian Schär just a couple of minutes before the end of added time, but it wasn't to be. Newcastle United actually losing 2-1 in extra time. Danny Welbeck popping up with his second goal of the season at St James's Park after breaking Newcastle hearts earlier in the campaign in the Premier League. He's done it again, coming off the bench and popping up with a crucial goal that has sent Newcastle United out of the FA Cup, and it's sent Brighton into the quarter-final. Now, what a opportunity missed this is for Newcastle United, because you've got no Arsenal, you've got no Liverpool, you've got at the minute, as I'm recording this, Manchester United losing to Fulham. You've also got the likes of Preston, Bournemouth, Crystal Palace, all still in the draw, but no Newcastle United. And this was a real opportunity for Newcastle United to not just have a chance of winning silverware at Wembley through the Carabao Cup later this month, but also to have another go in May and hopefully, try and win another cup then in the FA Cup. Wasn't to be. Newcastle United will be very, very disappointed to have crashed out in such a manner. They took the lead early on through Alexander Isak. He started the game. As I said earlier in the video, we weren't too sure what we were going to see with him, but when he arrived pre-match, it was a huge positive for Newcastle. He got thrown in from the outset, looked okay, scored from the penalty spot after Yankuba Minter gave away a penalty on Tino Livramento. He did come off in the closing stages. He went down with what looked like a little bit of an issue. He had some treatment before coming off the pitch, but thankfully Eddie Howe sort of playing that down at full time. He thinks that Alexander Isak may have just been suffering with a general bit of tiredness, and hopefully he will be okay for West Ham in just over a week's time. Other big talking points that we were talking about before the game was who was going to play in goal. Martin Dubravka got the shout. Now that is hugely important with the cup final coming up, because asked at the end of the game whether that was a cup decision or whether that was a decision with the future in mind, Eddie Howe sort of said this was a team selection and a decision about the goalkeeper with this game in mind, winning this game, the best chance of winning this game. Now I took that answer maybe as we might see Martin Dubravka come back in now between now and the cup final, which is something I've said on this podcast I didn't think would happen. I thought as soon as Nick Pope got in that position, he would stay there. I thought it was very, very unlikely that Dubravka was winning back the spot, but he was in the team today and he was probably Newcastle's man of the match. Kept some fantastic efforts out. He was really hard to beat, and he will come away from that performance finding it really difficult to imagine that he will be dropped out for the next Premier League game. So that was a big boost for him. As I mentioned, Alexander Isak scored that first goal. Yankuba Minter giving away the penalty. Now this was Minter's first game at St James's Park, despite playing for Newcastle, signing for Newcastle, ultimately never making an appearance for the club. He went up the other end and redeemed himself, scoring in the very closing stages of the first half. Nice little 1-2 with João Pedro before he finished in front of the Gallagher end. There was sort of a muted, surprisingly respectful celebration from him. He didn't want to celebrate, which was understandable. He's a former player, but he's not actually a former player. He never played for Newcastle United. His only real appearance at this ground previously was to watch a Newcastle match while he was on loan at Feyenoord. So he will have enjoyed that moment. Newcastle could have went in at half time a couple of goals ahead. Alexander Isak scored, but his second goal was ruled out for a marginal offside after a good assist from Harvey Barnes. And then second half comes out, and as I say, Newcastle, who could have been a couple of goals ahead, fell to pieces a little bit again. It was a very sloppy second half, not just from Newcastle but from Brighton as well. And it was one of those Jekyll and Hyde performances again, where we see Newcastle United looking good in the first half, struggling in the second half, and ultimately they couldn't find that third goal of the game to what would have really killed it, because there was a moment about 65 minutes, 70 minutes in the game, there was a really nervous energy around the ground, and it felt like as soon as somebody gets that third goal, they'll go and win it. Newcastle looked a little bit sloppy at the back, losing possession. There was some grumbles and groans and moans and boos from the home fans whenever they lost the ball. But Brighton could make them play. Newcastle equally couldn't sort of capitalise on Brighton not really playing very well either in the second period. Now, the flashpoint of the second period was undoubtedly the two red cards. The first one was for Anthony Gordon. He will now miss the Carabao Cup final, we believe. Newcastle and Eddie Howe say they may well appeal their decision, but we were just talking about there in the press conference. I feel like it would be very unlikely that decision gets overturned. It looks like Anthony Gordon is now going to face a 3-match ban, which means he obviously misses the Wembley showpiece. A really needless red card. He loses his temper, he lashes out, he shoves Van Heck in the head. Unfortunately, there's no malice in it. I think it's just a stupid thing. He's lost his temper a bit, he's lashed out, he's paid the price. Newcastle players sort of rushed over to try and calm the situation down before Anthony Taylor got his red card out, but in all honesty, it was never going to be anything else than a sending off for Anthony Gordon. VAR were never going to overturn it. I'd be very, very surprised, as I say, if an appeal sort of works. And that means Newcastle, like they were with Nick Pope 2 years ago, are going to be without a key player in Anthony Gordon for the cup final. Moments later, Tarek Lamptey gets sent off, second yellow card. Quite a late challenge on Jacob Murphy, and at that point it's 10v10 again. Newcastle, seconds later, thought they'd won it, and this is where football can change, and the entire video would have been totally different if this goal had stood. Bruno whips that free kick in after Lamptey's sending off, and Fabian Schär steers home the volley. The Gallagher goes wild, everyone goes wild. We think Newcastle have booked their place in the quarter-finals because of how late in the game it is. But a sort of a lengthy VAR check, despite the fact there was those semi-automated VAR decisions this afternoon, found that Newcastle Fabian Schär was offside, and unfortunately the goal did not stand. The rest is history. Extra time comes on. Newcastle again were knocking on the door, but again never really looked like being the team to go and win it. And Danny Welbeck, as I say, scores his second goal of the season at St James as he peeled away nicely. He's played onside by Tino Livramento. He sort of runs in between the left back and the centre back. Newcastle players don't know who to pick him up. He dinks it above Dubravka, and Brighton, their small number of away fans are celebrating like crazy. It means they're at the final 8, Newcastle are out, and they're at a little bit of a crossroads of the season. We've been talking about that distraction of the Carabao Cup final. Did they have one eye on it? Well, Eddie Howe, with that team that he put out today, was clearly saying, look, we've got the Carabao Cup final, but that's not enough. Yes, we're in the top 400, but that's not enough. We want to go far in the FA Cup. But unfortunately now, they go into West Ham really needing a result, because otherwise it will have been a disastrous period of preparation for that cup final in 2 weeks' time. They really need a morale boost. They need a big thumping win away at West Ham, who have been a look better than they did at St James's Park since Graham Potter came in. You really do get the feeling now that it's a crucial set of weeks in this season. Newcastle need to get back on track in the league, and they also really need a little boost, as I say, in confidence before that cup final in a couple of weeks. Today wasn't the answer for that. Today, despite a relatively good first half performance, we saw that same old second half struggle where Newcastle just come out and look like a totally different team, and unfortunately it's cost them this afternoon as they have exited the FA Cup, and now all attention will turn to the league. The players get a little break this week, which they'll need, and hopefully they can come back and get the train back on the tracks, get back on track in the next couple of weeks. But not the preparation they wanted ahead of the Carabao Cup final, and not what Eddie Howe wanted this afternoon when he named that strong team. Newcastle out of a cup they really could have went far in this season, and a cup they really could have gone and won.